Final Fantasy is one of the most well-known franchises in all of gaming, but what if I told you that not all of the games in this franchise are treated equally among the fans? While mainline games such as 6, 7, and 10 are widely regarded as some of the best RPGs of all time, others in the series are not so fondly remembered. Today we're going to take a look back at the 3 Final Fantasy games that are pretty widely disliked, and I'm going to talk about why that might be. Now, one thing to keep in mind is this video is not a review of each of these games. Though I will share my honest opinions on them, I will probably make individual reviews for each one somewhere down the road. So if you want to keep up to date on those videos, and if you do enjoy this video, be sure to hit that subscribe button. And without further ado, here are the most hated Final Fantasy games. Final Fantasy II is a game that Square had so little faith in that as soon as they faced any challenges with localization, they decided it wasn't even worth releasing outside of Japan, even given the success of the first Final Fantasy. Now, the first 6 Final Fantasy games had this weird thing going on, where 4 was called 2 and 6 was called 3 when they released in North America. It's kinda confusing, and it mostly stems from troubles with localizing them, and Square just not having faith in some of the games' ability to sell in a North American market. When this game finally came to North America in the early 2000s, about 15 years after its initial Japan release, many fans of the first game were confused with the extremely strange changes to core mechanics that this game made. Final Fantasy I is, in my opinion, a timeless, near-perfect introduction to the series. It is a simple yet fun RPG with a solid, straightforward storyline and decent combat. Now, Final Fantasy II, on the other hand, has a convoluted and hard-to-follow storyline mixed with a combat system that is downright awkward. And by that I mean, in Final Fantasy II, everything you do in combat, whether it's attacks or magic, has its own individual stat that goes up based on how much you use it. While this sounds like it might be an okay idea, it's actually a bit of a pain in the butt, because even things such as weapons have their own individual stats, resulting in it being quite frustrating when you're trying to upgrade your characters. Listen, I respect any game that tries to do something new and innovate, rather than just repeating the same old formula, but unfortunately for Square, they took a shot and missed here. When this game came to North America, it was bundled with Final Fantasy I, and that's honestly been the case in almost all of its various releases since then. So that tells you how confident Square still is about Final Fantasy II as a standalone product. Unless you're a real diehard fan, this is a mainline Final Fantasy game that you could get by without ever playing. While I do think hate is a strong word, and I don't personally hate it, it is one of the games on this list that I do understand the public's negative feelings towards. One thing I will say about it though is its weird mechanics paved the way for great games that use similar mechanics like Skyrim, so it does deserve some credit. The next Final Fantasy game that I very rarely hear people say anything good about is Final Fantasy VIII. Straight up, Final Fantasy VIII is not a bad game for its time. Its biggest problem is it was following up 2 of the best games ever in Final Fantasy VI and VII, so it was kind of set to fail from the get-go. If it was released as a standalone game with no attachment to the franchise, I can almost guarantee you that you would not hear nearly as much about it not being good. In some ways, it improved on Final Fantasy VII. While the graphics are the butt of a lot of jokes today, they did look significantly better than Final Fantasy VII's. The biggest problem here is Square once again tried reinventing the wheel when it came to combat, introducing the junction system. While this system was designed to be the most open and free combat system ever in an RPG, it's actually more of a confusing mess. Like Final Fantasy II, I still don't understand what's going on half the time when I'm playing. There are endless confusing tutorials explaining it, but given the lack of voice acting,
ain't nobody got time for that!
Aside from the once again weird combat, Final Fantasy VIII is a good game. Again, there was almost no way this game could meet the expectations given the hype around its predecessors. The storyline is actually really good, it's just not nearly as well written or memorable as the storylines in 6 and 7. And that's led to this game often being swept under the rug when people talk about the franchise. It also doesn't help that it was followed up by 2 absolute masterpieces in Final Fantasy IX and X, leading to the game being surrounded by games that are honestly just much better than it. Still, despite the negative perception from the public, I do recommend playing this game if you get a chance and if you are a fan of the franchise, because you might actually enjoy it. The last game on this list is the one that I personally feel the most strongly about, the notorious Final Fantasy XIII. I don't think Final Fantasy XIII is a bad game. In fact, I think Final Fantasy XIII is a really good game.
Oh no!
Yep, I don't think it's a top 5 in the series, but I am a big fan of it. Now, I'm only 26 years old, so this was the first Final Fantasy game that I really got into when I was about 13 years old. So my opinion might be a little bit biased, but I am sure a lot of you feel the same about other games in this franchise, regardless of the public perception. Now, I am by no means saying this is a perfect game. There are definitely some cons. I like the story, but it is cheesy, and I mean ridiculously cheesy at times.
I will stand by you, no matter what happens. I'm yours forever. Sarah. My one, my only. Will you marry me?
And the game is also very combat heavy. Given its linearity, this can sometimes lead to it feeling a little bit repetitive, but what this game does well definitely overshadows those negatives. I think Final Fantasy XIII is literally the best looking Xbox 360 PS3 era game. I'm replaying it right now and it looks better than a lot of games released today, despite being released 15 years ago. Though it is pretty combat heavy, the combat system is really fun once you've progressed enough to open things up. While many people disagree with what I'm about to say, I love the cast of characters and think Lightning is a really good protagonist. She's literally like a female version of Cloud when it comes to attitude, and he's kind of the face of the franchise, so I don't get why she gets so much hate. The voice acting is on point, though I do understand why a lot of people find Vanille annoying. I believe that this game shares a lot of similarities with Final Fantasy X. While it's obviously not quite as good, it's definitely enjoyable and worth playing if you like that game, as they are both pretty linear in nature and full of long epic cutscenes. It has that interactive movie feel that you either love or hate, and I personally love it. The game was also followed up with a direct sequel, Final Fantasy XIII Part 2, that is widely regarded as way better than the first game, and another follow-up called Lightning Returns, which is also pretty well hated. But if you're a fan of the base game Final Fantasy XIII, you'll probably love the whole trilogy. So here are my final thoughts on these 3 games as a whole, and why they are so hated. The longer a franchise is around, the more fans and haters it gathers. When people have strong opinions, either positive or negative, they often share them on social media, and it's like a snowball effect. People that share similar opinions contribute to the conversation, and that opinion eventually makes its way to others. None of these games are bad games. They just failed to meet some people's expectations and aren't as critically praised as a lot of other games in this franchise. When the standard is so high, there are bound to be some misses, and I'm guilty of being negative with certain games in this franchise too. I just made a video that was pretty much criticizing Final Fantasy 16 because of some of the reasons people dislike 2, 8, or 13. So the moral of the story is, form your own opinion after trying a game out regardless of what other people say, because nothing is worse than someone who hates on a game they have never actually played. Anyways guys, thanks for stopping by. I'm trying really hard to hit that 1,000 subs mark here, so be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on those bell notifications, as at some point I'll do detailed individual reviews about each of the games mentioned in this video. Like the video and leave a comment down below, and if you really enjoyed this video, you could always consider becoming a channel member to support future content. As always, take care guys, and I will see you in the next one.